are you afraid of? This video will destroy her. She deserves it. I don't know. I'm scared of her, Camille. Stop it, you. What are you two whispering about? What secrets? Keep your nose out of it, Cindy. Go to class. And you, Rosie, think carefully. This is our chance. That's it. I gotta go. Mwah! And Camille jumped up and down the hallway. Hi, my name is Rosie. We were just arguing with my best friend Camille. It's all about our new class teacher, Mrs. Kindle, who's making life miserable for Camille and me. Please subscribe to the channel and I'll tell you what happened. And now listen to my story. She's been a real pain in the ass. At the beginning of the year, the principal announced that our beloved Miss Beverly was in the hospital and would be replaced by this Kindle. She didn't like me right away. I don't know why, but she was trying to make friends with the elite of the class. For example, Tyler was captain of the school basketball team and he was always missing practice, but he often skipped class. Mrs. Kindle turned a blind eye. She also chatted sweetly at recess with our bitchy Cindy, who fancied herself queen of the class. Her company of self-righteous brats like herself could push you, kick your backpack, accidentally spill juice on your clothes. And more than once, our new homeroom teacher saw these incidents, but she didn't react, and it was awful. Yes, indeed. Miss Beverly never allowed herself to ignore such behavior in class. She was always stopping Cindy. Exactly, and now it's chaos. Kindle's friends with whoever's convenient, who have rich and powerful parents.
Are you girls talking about me, or am I just hearing things?
We turned pale and looked at Camilla. What a bad time for her to come up. From that day on, all hell broke loose for Camilla and me. Mrs. Kindle turned everyone in the class against us. I was persecuted for a used backpack from the thrift store. And Camille was brought to tears in the locker room by the girls giggling at her small breasts. Today, I froze in place when I saw my school locker. It was painted and smeared with some kind of paint. And not far away, Mrs. Kindle was standing there smirking. That was the last straw. Kami, this is unbearable. We're real outcasts. I can't take it anymore. We've got to make up with her. Otherwise, it will never end. No way. She's just waiting for us to come crawling back on our knees to apologize. She won't. But I was having enough trouble as it was. The other day, my parents announced to me that they were getting divorced. It was not news. Dad and Mom have long been just neighbors on the same living space. But recently, Mom accidentally saw a message on Dad's phone, clearly intimate nature, and decided to dot all the dots. So she filed for divorce. I had to get over it, and then there's the Kindle. I had to make it up to her, so I figured out a way. The school's website said Mrs. Kindle was into contemporary art, and I had an idea. After class, I knocked on the office, which had a shiny plaque with the name Kindle on it.
What do you want, Rose?
The teacher's tone was clearly not conducive to conversation. I walked over to her desk and held out a gift-wrapped book. Mrs. Kindle, I don't think our acquaintance with you is going well.
You're not just imagining it.
The teacher said, pointing at the book I was holding out to her.
And take your gift back.
It's a collection of works by contemporary artists. You're into art. Suddenly, the teacher grabbed the book and threw it into the trash can near the table.
Go away.
Already in the hallway, I exhaled. Is this really happening to me? That Kindle has lost her fear. I'm going to the principal right now. I've had enough humiliation. And within minutes, I was knocking on the principal's door. Mr. Wilson has always been very loyal to the students. That year, he let us come to school in costumes for Halloween, and it was a lot of fun. And recently, they opened up a rec room at the school for the older students. Everyone loved Mr. Wilson, but the principal didn't respond to my complaints. He rubbed his forehead lightly and said calmly,
Rosie, you're exaggerating. You better support Joanna. Mrs. Kindle. She's new to our school. It's hard for her. Be kinder to people.
I wish he'd slapped me. It would have been less painful and hurtful. Tears came to my eyes. But why is the principal defending that nasty teacher? I decided not to tell Camille about the incident, but Kindle started to get back at me really hard. She called me in every class and bombarded me with difficult questions. My grades dropped to 0. One night, my mom came into my room.
Rosie, what's going on? I got your grades from last month. It's terrible. Do you need help?
I couldn't take it anymore and told my mom everything, both about the bullying from the new teacher and my unfortunate conversation with the principal. Mom hugged me and promised to talk to Mrs. Kindle. But that darn woman knew her business. After the conversation at school, Mom came back irritated.
Rosie, you humiliated me. Why did you lie? Mrs. Kindle is a wonderful woman, and she's very worried about you. She says you've completely abandoned your studies.
That's not true.
I explained to her that our family is going through a bad time. But that doesn't give you the right to behave like that. Apologize to your teacher tomorrow.
That's it. There's nowhere to go, and I dread to think what Mrs. Kindle will do to me now. I'm afraid to go to school. For 2 days, I stayed home on my bed eating ice cream on a grand scale. But on Wednesday, my mom made me get dressed and took me to school. It was a day I will never forget. In the hallway, I ran into a crying Camille. She had a mop in her hands. Seeing the mute question in my eyes, Camille nodded towards the classroom. Kindle came up with occupational therapy for me. She was sick of hearing all my protests. This is a nightmare. I knew the teacher was taking it out on her best friend because of me. I'll help you. I have 2 floors to clean. After school. The 2 of us can do it faster. We hugged each other and hurried off to class. It was already dark outside, and we were still scrubbing the floors with Camille. My back was stiff from the experience. Let's take a break. I'm starving. There should still be a snack machine on the first floor. Let's go. So Camille and I went downstairs. It was quiet. We walked tiredly down the dark hallway. Suddenly, I heard some laughter. We froze. Maybe I imagined it. When we took a couple of steps forward, we saw a narrow strip of light. The door to the principal's office was half open, and from there came quiet voices. We slowly approached the door and opened our mouths in surprise. Mrs. Kindle sat relaxed in her chair with her head tilted playfully. We heard her whispering.
Listen, darling, I'm going to tell everyone that we're having an affair and that it was you who put me up to it. I hope you don't want any trouble. You'll lose everything you have.
With trembling hands, I turned on the camera on my phone and started filming. Thankfully, the door to the office completely concealed me.
Stop it, Joanna. No one will believe you, especially since the students are complaining about you. A couple more incidents like this and I'll have to fire you. I don't think that's what you want.
Suddenly, Mrs. Kindle jumped up and grabbed Principal Wilson by the scruff of the neck. Yeah, she was arguing with him in his office, and I was filming it on my phone.
What's the PTA going to do to you when they find out what you spent the money from the school fundraiser on? A 2-week vacation in the Bahamas and a 5-star hotel. Isn't that a little lavish, Mr. Wilson? Are you sure you want everyone to know about this? I don't think so. So you'll do whatever I say.
The scandal was escalating, and at any moment, someone could run out into the corridor and see me and Camilla. We've got to go. With quick steps, holding hands, we hurried back with my friend. An hour later, having cleaned the floors in absolute silence, we were walking home. I kept replaying in my head what I had seen in the principal's office. My phone seemed to be burning my pocket because of the video I'd caught today. We have to publish it. That couple is screwing the whole school over. I was silent and hesitant. In fact, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to consult. What if it turns out to be like that book again? They'll just punish me and Camille, say the video was fake, delete it from the chat room, and we'll never get cleaned up. Late at night, we sat with Camille at my house and discussed what we had seen. I asked Camille to wait to publish the video. She wouldn't listen. Eventually, we had a fight and Camille went home. Tired, I collapsed on my bed and fell asleep. In the morning, my phone woke me up. The messages were beeping one after another. Opening the chat room, I was stunned. Yesterday's video was uploaded. I dialed Camille, but there was no answer. The school was in a tizzy. Mr. Wilson and Mrs. Kindle were being interviewed behind closed doors. The police, the press, the pupils all crowded into the corridors of the school. What have you done? I grabbed the arm of a pleased Camilla. We did it together. Serves them right. A month passed. Both the principal and the teacher were fired. The story made so much noise that our school is being scrutinized. I've been homeschooled. I can't go to school. I can't communicate with Camille. She stole that video from me and posted it in a chat room without my knowledge. Should I have gone public with that story? I don't know. On the bright side, now Mrs. Kindle will think twice about shaming any of her students. That's if she's allowed to teach. The principal's facing jail time for overstepping her authority, but that doesn't make me feel any better. How do you feel about it? What would you do if you were me? Let's discuss it in the comments.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and here is my story. You may despise me or even judge me, but you know what? I hate my mom. Yes, it's true, and I'm not going to make excuses. That woman ruined my life. How did that happen? Subscribe and find out. And don't forget to like if you loved the story. I've always been a quiet person. I like to spend time reading and being alone with myself. In junior high school, I started having skin and dental problems, which caused me to be teased and insulted constantly by my classmates and older students. I remember carefully applying ointment to every inch of my face every night, hating my braces and dreaming how one day I would wake up incredibly beautiful and make everyone regret their words. And one day, that's exactly what happened. Skin meds, a trip to camp where I had my first kiss, and tons more. And then I got my damn braces off. Oh my god, I've been wanting to do that for so long. My teeth were almost like Hollywood actors. It turned out I had incredibly long legs and a pretty good figure. So after coming home from camp, I immediately took all my pocket money and went to the mall. That's where I ran into Naomi, the biggest gossip in our school. Naomi always looked gorgeous and wore the most fashionable clothes. Of course, I hated her for bullying me. But now she admired how I changed over the summer. So we went shopping together. It was so cool. I couldn't even believe it. One of the most popular girls in school eating muksandi and chocolate with me, showing me her TikToks and advertising me on what would suit me. And you know who would just die of envy? Lily from Parallel. Naomi was happily looking at a top that I thought was too revealing. Why? I asked, embarrassed. Because with that figure and my advice, you'll easily beat Nick away from her. Nick was the arrogant high school boy that all the girls dreamed of. He was always kicking me and calling me a weirdo, so I just had to rub his nose in it. But when I got home, happy and shopping, I got some shocking news. We're getting a divorce. I think it was my dad who said that. He and Mom were sitting there with their eyes down. The bags full of clothes fell out of my hands. But why? My breath hitched with excitement.
Your mother betrayed me. I won't stand for it.
Suddenly, my father slammed his fist on the table with all his might, stood up, and walked out. Mom burst into tears and ran after him. And I was left standing in the middle of the living room, trying to comprehend everything that had just come over me. Dad was demanding, sometimes nervous, but I loved him. My mom and I always had a wall. She didn't like everything about me and hated spending time with me. I only told my grandmother about all my problems when she came for the holidays. But I didn't believe she could do that. However, all thoughts of the situation between my parents disappeared when, on the first day of school, I saw how my previously hated classmates reacted to me. The most popular beauties gave me angry looks. The hottest guys turned around. What did I tell you? A short, thin top, a mini, and it's cool. Naomi met me outside of class. And then this happened. You know, like in rom-coms, when some cool girl walks into a room in slow motion and all eyes are on her? Her hair blowing around like the wind, everything about her is perfect? I guess that's what I looked like in Nick's eyes. When I walked in, he was right beside me.
You look good as new.
Is that all the compliments you're capable of? And I saw Nick blush for the first time in my life. The one who'd made fun of my braces and yelled the loudest that I was a freak. But for some reason, instead of tasting victory and getting even with him, I wanted to kiss him. Of course I didn't. But Nick was totally into me. The notes in class, the Kinder on my desk, the balloon heart by my locker. I honestly tried to remember my resentments, but on Valentine's Day, he made me a huge Valentine's card and asked me to dance.
I really like you. Forget about everything and let's be together.
I melted. We started dating. Every second, my thoughts were on Nick. He was my escape from what was going on at home. My dad gave the house to my mom, but I was angry. He knew what she was like, but he left me with her. Mom really acted like I was bothering her. We didn't talk much. She seemed to be spending time with her lover. But I was glad she did. A year went by. Nick became a student. We kept seeing each other. I saw my mom more and more gloomy. Her relationship wasn't working out. So she suddenly turned her attention to me. She found out I was seeing someone and started demanding to meet me.
Let's get acquainted, and all the questions will disappear.
Nick smiled. I didn't want to, but I finally gave in. My mom ordered dinner. Nick came with a beautiful bouquet for her, and he was polite. I noticed that Mom had been eyeing him meticulously all evening, and after he left, she angrily sniped at me to put the dishes away. So, could he come over sometimes? I asked timidly. Okay. Mom waved her hand and went into the bathroom. But then I noticed something strange. Mom was in a better mood. She updated her closet, bought fitted dresses with cleavage, changed her hair, and started smiling. She even started baking cookies and treated Nick and me to some when he stopped by. Did you have someone over? I asked. But Mom just smiled slyly. I might have. How are things with Nick? Things were bad. Lately, it was like Nick had gone cold. Everything irritated him. The way I ate, the music I played. I was worried. I consulted with Naomi. You haven't had anything yet, have you? Maybe that's the point. Naomi laughed, watching me blush. When I invited Nick to visit me, he looked at me coldly and said no. Are we okay? I asked frustratedly.
We need to take a break.
Nick turned around and walked away without another word. I was in so much pain. I didn't understand what was happening.
You can spend the night at my place.
Naomi assured me that we'd find a solution together. I left a note for my mom that I wouldn't spend the night, took my things, and went to Naomi's house. But it turned out she was having a party she hadn't told me about. Why do you need it? Let's have fun. I tried to distract myself, but my thoughts kept coming back to our conversation. So while Naomi gossiped with her friends, I slipped out of her house and went home. I just wanted to be alone with my thoughts. I opened the door and heard romantic music. It sounded like my mom had decided to have a date while I was gone. And I walked through. I glanced around the living room and froze with shock. Mom was sitting on the couch in a translucent dress, making out with Nick. He was gently stroking her cheek, and she was wrapping her arms around his neck. I yelled, and they bounced away from each other like scalded animals. Nick looked guilty, but I didn't see any guilt on my mom's face. In fact, she was angry that her date had been interrupted.
I'll explain everything.
Nick took a step toward me. No! How could you do this? How could you? I was out of breath. How long? How long has this been going on?
A few, weeks.
Get out! Get out!
Hannah, I'm sorry.
He bowed his head and walked towards the exit. I turned to my mom. Why? Because you and Dad ruined my life. I wanted to shine, but I had to stay home. You'll find someone else. You've got your whole life ahead of you. I slapped her and ran outside crying. 3 months passed. I moved in with my grandmother and lived with her. I'm not going to school yet. Nick keeps texting me, but I have nothing to say to him. I've been betrayed by the people closest to me, and I can't forgive them. Could you forgive someone like that? Have you ever hated your best friend? I don't just hate her. I'm afraid of her. I couldn't imagine my significant other being capable of such a thing. My name is Carrie, and my story is about what happens when your best friend becomes the worst nightmare of your life. Subscribe and give me a like if you like my confession. So, where do I start? I'm 16, and I'm a student at the most average school in a town where it rains all the time. I love listening to different music and occasionally draw portraits. I also have a friend, Lucy, who is the best person in the world. Lucy and I have been inseparable since childhood, although her house is quite far from mine. We've been through a lot of hard times together. Her parents' divorce, which was accompanied by breaking dishes and terrible scandals. My appendicitis, which decided to make itself known a few hours before Christmas. Her first failed crush. My first terrible crush. Acne, trips to the dentist, self-doubt, all of which we always experienced together. Like Cheryl's bullying and taunting. She was a cheerleader at our school, a classic of the genre. What more can I say? But if the other girls on her team didn't care about Lucy and me, Cheryl did. She seemed to exist just to annoy us. Every morning when we noticed her perfect figure and shiny hair, we knew it was going to be hot again today. Cheryl's pranks on me were always humiliating, but tolerable. Starting another nasty gossip, slipping a button, accidentally flipping a glass of juice up my skirt, it made me uncomfortable and it pissed me off. But I didn't dare to retaliate against her, and just tried to avoid her. But it was different with Lucy.
I don't know why, but Cheryl hated my friend. She told everyone that she saw Lucy rummaging through trash cans and that she bought things at thrift stores. Claimed she had the intestinal flu and everyone should stay away from Lucy. Then she started a rumor that my friend allegedly kissed the geography teacher, Mr. Smith, and even sent high school students racy photos for money. But the final straw was Cheryl's claim that Lucy had stolen money from her backpack. The shameless girl even got one of her friends to confirm the slander and made a whole video about it. I wasn't in class at the time. I wasn't feeling well, so my mom let me stay at home. So I found out about it through the newsletter. Cheryl had the foresight to put a video on the teacher's student chat room. Lucy didn't go to school for 2 weeks and even only texted me, flatly refusing to see me. I was bitter and I also felt completely helpless. "Why are you doing this?" I asked Cheryl angrily a few days after the incident. But she gave me a mocking look, flipped her hair, and walked the other way.
2 weeks later, Lucy finally texted me to say she would show up at school. But when I saw her, I hardly recognized her.
Lucy had a short haircut and her eyes were emphasized with black arrows.
The tight pants and leather corset turned Lucy into a real vamp woman.
The whole school almost craned their necks to look at her. "Lucy, you're gorgeous!"
I hugged my friend, but she grabbed my arm and pulled me into the bathroom. "Hey, we have class!"
"That's good."
Lucy gave me a hard look.
What I heard threw me into a complete stupor.
Lucy said she'd had enough, that Cheryl couldn't get away with anything now, and that I had to help her do it.
But what could we do? I wondered. Everyone at school is on her side.
"You're wrong. A lot of people are just pretending. But in reality, they've been wanting to get even with her for a long time. That bastard will get what's coming to her. Are you with me?"
To be honest, I didn't want to confront anyone. I knew it wouldn't end well. But Lucy's my best friend, so I thought I'd support her. A little bit of a lesson for Cheryl would have been nice. It started out innocently enough. I have to admit, I kind of liked it. At first, we did little tricks. Slipping nasty things into her locker, sprinkling hot peppers in her lunch, gossiping. And they set up a fake account for a guy who supposedly asked Cheryl out. And then they'd send her to the cafe where they were supposedly supposed to meet and enjoy watching her unhappily texting angry messages to the suitor who never showed up.
Lucy was having an insane amount of fun at times like this. But soon, my friend started to get violent. First, she slipped Cheryl a laxative before an important game, and she couldn't go out on the field.
We laughed, but I felt bad. Then Lucy stole Cheryl's things from the locker room, and she ran around the school in a towel trying to find them. At one point, I wondered if we'd become like Cheryl, but I didn't dare talk to my friend. One day, Lucy came to me and told me that there was a chance to take revenge on her hated classmate once and for all. It turned out that Cheryl's ex-boyfriend, whom she had sneakily dumped, had shared some provocative photos of her ex with Lucy. He promised to delete them, but thankfully, he didn't. Lucy laughed contentedly. "Wasn't that a little much?" I asked incredulously, and Lucy's face changed. "Too much?" What she was doing to me wasn't too much? I get it, you're in pain. She's a monster. But we're not like that. We're not like that because we're better than her. And we're gonna punish that pompous fool. I'm sorry, Lucy. I love you. You're my best friend. But I'm not gonna help you anymore. She looked at me in a way that made me feel cold inside. Well, suit yourself. But Cheryl's not the only one with secrets, right? Are you threatening me? I looked at her dumbfounded. Don't forget, I know everything about you. And that's all anyone can know. If you don't help me, I'll destroy you too. Think carefully about which side you're taking. And Lucy left with a loud slam on the door. And I wrapped myself in my blanket and cried in despair. I didn't want to be a puppet in my friend's hands. But she could tell all my secrets, show others all my photos and videos that no one was supposed to see. So Cheryl or me, who should get hurt? I logged onto the fake page we'd created with Lucy. It turned out that she kept texting Cheryl on behalf of a fictional boyfriend, and those messages contained a lot of filth. Lucy was calling Cheryl names, threatening her, writing obscene things. I was shocked. This is my friend, my Lucy. I refused to help. But Lucy, using a fake account, started blackmailing Cheryl anyway. The poor girl had lost weight in a week. Her eyes were distant and frightened. I felt sorry for her. So I took action. I told Cheryl everything, and even how I helped hurt her at first. She was furious, of course. And a few hours later, all my secrets came out in the general chat room. My best friend had betrayed me. All of our conversations, discussions, my private photos, in an instant, it was all out in the open. We were expelled from school. Bullying others is now severely punished, and rightly so. Lucy's going to get in serious trouble for blackmailing Cheryl. I was lucky enough to stay under house arrest. But my reputation has been severely damaged. My parents won't even talk to me. My classmates mocked me and constantly send me insulting messages. Lucy and I don't talk. She thinks I'm a traitor and hates me outright. And I still cannot understand. What happened to my friend? Did Cheryl's antics turn her into a monster? Or was she always like that and I refused to notice it? Or maybe I did betray my friend by protecting her abusers. I don't have an answer to that question. Do you?
So, I'll repeat biology. A cell is the smallest structure capable of self-reproduction. Oh no, they're arguing again. I can't take this nightmare anymore. Hi, do your parents fight as much as mine do? I'm Rebecca, and I can't take all their fighting anymore. Morally, it's unbearable. I've been feeling disgusting lately. It's horrible. And it's because my parents have declared war on each other. And they're using me in their revenge. You subscribe to the channel, and I'll tell you how crazy things happen at home. You'll be horrified. You know, when I look at my parents, I realize I don't want to get married. That's for sure. Why should I? Candy bouquet period of relationship flies by very quickly, and then begin gray everyday life, which ends with scandals and scolding. Who's all this happiness for? In my parents' case, that's exactly how it is. I grew up and noticed how my parents eventually stopped kissing, hugging each other, became indifferent neighbors, and soon real enemies. I feel like they hate each other. I thought it was over when they filed for divorce. I stayed with my mom and everything was fine. My mom and I got along well, shared secrets, became friends, but not until I accidentally brought up my dad. That's when the horror began. Then it was as if something possessed my mom. Her eyes began to glisten feverishly, her nostrils flared, and she turned into a real fury. Why are you talking about him again? Your father ruined my whole life. He took my youth. And so she could wail endlessly, complaining about her horrible life. But suddenly my mom got a promotion at work, and she had to go on a business trip to another country. And I have school here, so I went to live with my father. Not bad, considering that my dad was less annoyed with me about my grades and gave me more money for pocket money. But as soon as I mentioned the name of his ex-wife, that is, my mom, he turned into a monster. Screaming, yelling, muttering, whining, remembering all the sorrows of family life. In a word, a complete crap. But I noticed that even if I avoided talking about Mom, Dad was still looking for reasons to pick on something. It's like, it makes him feel good. I realized that each of them enjoys poisoning the other's life. What am I supposed to do about it? Their war continued in court as they began to share custody of me, but as soon as their eyes met in the courtroom, that was it. The war was starting. The windows shook from their loud shouting, and the judge ran out of the room. It was so unbearable. In the end, only the guards calmed them down. And because of their inadequate behavior, they were placed under house arrest, and I was placed in a shelter. I spent 2 months in a horrible institution. And I was mad at my parents. Why couldn't they behave properly? Why didn't they ever visit me at the orphanage? And then my mom showed up like nothing had happened.
Daughter, we've made an arrangement with your father. You'll live with me on weekdays and spend the weekends at his place.
And Mom kissed my nose happily. I thought it would finally stop, but I was wrong. My parents didn't want to see each other, so every Friday I drove across town to see my dad, and then back to my mom's on Monday. My dad's neighborhood was a bit of a mess, not very prosperous. One night, 2 blocks from my dad's house, I was accosted by a mugger. He came out of a dark alley, my hands, and disappeared into the night. I was so scared. I took the first bus I could find and went home to my mom. I told her everything, and she started blaming my father for everything. Mom was pacing the room, rubbing her hands together, and I was willing to bet anything that she was happy? Yes, like she'd found another reason to scold my father. I was beginning to think that Mom had set up the whole thing to ruin my weekend, because Dad and I were going to an amusement park, and now I'd be home for 2 days and listen to what a bad father I had. What awaited me next was an unrivaled show. For hours, Mom yelled at Dad on the phone, telling him how our daughter, that's me, had almost died. Mom was certainly overreacting, because of a burglar. But as it turned out, that was just the flowers. Next, a really big problem awaited me. I'm really into dancing, modern dances. I've been doing it for a few years. We have a great group at school. We constantly take part in different competitions and can boast a lot of awards. And now, out of the blue, we're going to an international competition. Can you believe it? In sunny Spain. And that's no joke. The endless, tedious training began. Every day. No days off. We had to learn some complicated dances to impress the jury. 2 months of preparation flew by. My mom even took a vacation to support me. Our team and I were determined only to win. And here we are at the airport. Noise, commotion, nervousness. Almost the entire team had checked in. I was the last one. In my mind, I was already sitting in the cabin, but something was wrong. The stewardess checked my documents, then called someone. It turned out that my father had issued a ban on my travel abroad. It was his way of getting back at my mom. He knew exactly how I was preparing, and how supportive my mom was, and because of his whim, I stayed home. We called him from the airport, but in vain. Mom was furious, and as it turned out, she was preparing a new plan of revenge against my father. While still living together, Mom and Dad were always fighting over my lessons. Dad was convinced he was brilliant at math, and he always helped me with it. Maybe that's why it was so easy for me. And Dad bragged in front of everyone that it was his merit. Mom would turn pale and boil over with anger at this point. So, I had a college entrance exam in math. I spent several hours solving the hardest problems and examples. I walked out of there confident that I had gotten it right. Mom? What are you doing here? I ran into my mom in the lobby of the college where I'd just taken my math test.
I came to cheer you on, daughter. But a little late. Sorry.
I laughed, hugged my mom, and we went to drink cocoa at the nearest cafe. Then I forgot about it. I remembered a week later when I received the results of the entrance exam. I was horrified. Not a single correct answer. I cried all night long. How could I do that? Dad was so upset, he wouldn't talk to me at all. And Mom, she was so calm. I couldn't believe it, so I went to the college. I demanded to see my work. And what do you think? That paper wasn't mine. It wasn't my handwriting. It wasn't my answers. It was a mess. Who would do that? And why was Mom acting so calm the whole time? Did she do it just to spite my father? After all, she's been savoring my failing the exam for a long time, blaming it on my dad. And then by chance, I came across a psychologist's videos on YouTube. She specialized in family therapy, and especially in divorce and its consequences. In one of her cases, She told how parents took revenge on each other through their child. And I was struck by lightning. That's my case. All the puzzles were put together in one ugly picture. How adults are looking for any reason to hurt each other, and it's their child who suffers for it. I cried all night, because I can't change anything. The scarf incident, after which I had to call an ambulance for my dad, didn't even surprise me. And the scarf my mom put around my neck when she walked me to my dad's. It was beautiful, big, but as it turned out, it was covered in the hair of the neighbor's cat. And my dad's terribly allergic to cats. And as soon as I appeared on the doorstep of his house, Dad started sneezing terribly. Then his eyes got red, he had trouble breathing, and we spent the night in the hospital, where he was injected with allergy shots. Mom, stop laughing! It's not funny. Dad could have died. I tried to calm my mom, who laughed until tears when I told her about the ambulance, shots, and Dad's puffy eyes. And Mom was happy about her next little victory. Daddy soon got his revenge. A week later, a magnificent cake was delivered to Mommy. Unsuspecting, she ate almost half of it in one sitting. And then she was in bed for 24 hours with terrible pains. The cake was expired. I was mad at both of them. I had to take the blame for everything all the time. I had already decided to move in with my grandmother so I could live in peace until I finished school. But suddenly, the hatchet was buried deep. There was silence for weeks. Mom was up to her ears in work. Dad enjoyed spending weekends with me. Is that so? Does that really happen? It's been quiet for a few weeks now. As usual, I came home after school, and I heard someone laughing from the living room. A man's laugh. Well, my mom finally has someone. Whew! She'll forget about Dad and this craziness will be over. Joyfully ran through my head. I looked into the living room and, stunned. On the couch, gently hugging Mom around the waist, was Dad. He was whispering something in Mom's ear, and she was giggling back. Seeing my surprised face, Mom winked at me.
Daughter, we made up, and we will live together again.
That's great news. Then Dad loudly smacked Mom on the nose, and they both laughed loudly. It looked like they were going on a second honeymoon. And the thought was scary. I knew it would be a couple weeks after their stormy reconciliation, and they'd start fighting again. Harder. More aggressive. And I'd have to clean up the mess again. And I'm so tired of it. I don't know what to do. Maybe I should move in with my grandmother? But those two can kill each other if they're not stopped in time. What would you do? Would you stay? Right. If you have any thoughts, in the comments, we'll discuss.
Dad, let's talk.
I'm busy. Next time.
He put the cup in the sink and hurried up the stairs to the upstairs. I sank exhaustedly onto the table. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't hold back the tears. I couldn't bear it. My father hates me. And I don't know how to go on. It wasn't always like this. We were a happy family who had barbecues on the weekends. My mom's infectious laughter, my dad's sparkling jokes were now a pain in the soul. Everything had shattered into tiny shards in an instant. And now they can't be glued back together. I'm sorry my story has such a sad beginning. My name is Anna. I'm 16. And this is my story. That night we were going to my dad's boss's birthday party. We'd been family friends for a long time and often spent time together. It was going to be a big party. Mom spent half a day doing makeup, trying on dresses. She paraded in one and another, waiting for Dad's approval. But for some reason, Dad was nervous. He grumbled all day, which wasn't like him at all. Mom whispered that maybe the boss, Mr. Stone, was going to announce Dad's promotion, and that's why he was nervous. I hadn't paid attention to it then, but now, that detail was surprising. Mr. Stone greeted us warmly, and Mrs. Stone gave me and my mom a big hug. Everything was as always, friendly atmosphere, delicious dishes, quiet music, and Philip, kissing me on the cheek, pulled me upstairs to his room on the second floor. We sat down to play a new computer game. Philip is Mr. Stone's son. We're the same age and in the same grade. My parents have been teasing us for a long time, saying, "When are you going to start dating?" That night, Mr. Stone winked at me when he saw Philip hugging me. And only Dad looked at Mrs. Stone in silence. And she lowered her eyes. So strange. It was the first time I'd ever been able to dive into those memories. I didn't notice such details at the time. We'd been playing with Philip for hours. There was laughter coming from the living room. Our parents were having fun too. Toward midnight, my mom called out to me. We started to go home. I fell asleep in the car. I was awakened by the horrible grinding of wheels, the howling of brakes, my mom's scream, and a bang, and then darkness. I woke up to the pungent smell of medicine. It was hard to move. My whole body ached. I'm in the hospital. My dad's with me. He was exhausted. His eyes inflamed. He stood up abruptly and sobbed when I called out to him.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, daughter. I don't know how it happened.
He kept muttering and I couldn't understand. A nurse came in and when she saw that I had regained consciousness, she sent Dad out the door. I just heard her ask him in a stern voice. I hope you didn't say anything to her. The poor girl has been through enough. Then they injected me with something and I fell asleep again. For a month I knew nothing. And that, looking back, was probably my last happy month. I woke up, I was fed, I was bandaged, I was examined. I started to slowly get back up. Then I slowly walked around the room. Everything was slowly healing. My dad visited me every day. We chatted, little by little, then I'd be sedated again. And I'd drift off to sleep. I felt better, physically, but the anxiety was growing. I could see my father's sunken eyes when he came in. Dad was afraid to look at me, and I was afraid to ask. It all came to light at discharge. A nurse wheeled me in my wheelchair to the exit and whispered in my ear, "Sweetheart, be strong. I'm sorry you're without your mommy." I wasn't ready to hear that. The truth, spoken out loud, destroyed me. But seeing my father in pain, I suffered in silence. Things were different at home. It was quiet, sad, and empty. Dad had all of Mom's things. He was at work all day long. In the morning, I made breakfast for him and myself, but I never heard a thank you in return. I didn't resent him. Daddy was having a hard time. We were going crazy in our grief. I took sleeping pills to sleep. And in the morning, antidepressants. After a month, I forced myself to go to school, to distract myself. He didn't question me. He didn't bother me. But he was always there for me. Today I felt sick in class and asked to go home. I had a headache. It must be those antidepressants. At home, when I opened the door, I went straight to my room on the second floor. But from the kitchen came my father's quiet voice.
Stop it. Don't call me again. Time is of the essence, Courtney. We made a terrible mistake back then.
I froze. Courtney? That's Mr. Stone's wife's name. But why is she calling Daddy? And what kind of mistake is she talking about?
Eavesdropping?
Dad was standing in the doorway, looking as grim as a cloud. I nodded negatively and ran upstairs. From that day on, I started having nightmares. In my sleep, I kept hearing the screeching of brakes, my mom screaming, and a bang. I woke up in a wet sweat, and I couldn't sleep until morning.
What's wrong with you, Anna? You haven't looked like yourself lately. Circles under your eyes.
At recess, he was looking at me anxiously. I didn't know how to tell him.
I've long wanted to offer you. A year ago, I went to a psychologist. I had a difficult period and he helped me. Maybe you'll feel better when you talk.
I don't know why, but I nodded in response. A beautiful woman with a soft voice invited me to sit down on the couch. Liz, that's how the psychologist suggested I address her. For a couple of minutes, we sat in silence. She waited patiently. Then I took in more air, and for the first time, she said out loud what had tormented me for a long time. My mom died in a car accident. And then I told, and cried, and I told again. For the first time in months, I didn't have nightmares. Liz was slowly unraveling the tangle of my suffering. We found out that I didn't remember a lot of things. Liz explained that my brain was purposely storing these memories somewhere in the back of my mind. That this temporary amnesia was my body's protective response to the horror. And I could try hypnosis if I was ready to remember everything. So I decided, as I listened to Liz's soft voice, I drifted into slumber. And suddenly I found myself sitting in the backseat of the car. Mom and Dad up front. Night, streetlights,
We're on our way home from hanging out at Mr. Stone's. I thought I fell asleep in the car, but actually,
It was a good night, wasn't it? Everything was so delicious. Courtney outdid herself.
Daddy didn't say anything.
Honey, what's wrong with you? You haven't said a word all night.
Jess, we need to talk. I can't lie anymore, and you don't deserve this.
I know what he's going to say to Mom.
Courtney and I had a relationship, and it was a mistake. But I want you to know, I love you. I'm sorry, Jess.
And Dad reached out and put his hand on Mom's shoulder. For a second, he took his eyes off the road.
Suddenly, we were blinded by the lights. A big truck was coming at us. Dad tried to turn the wheel. Mom screamed. The brakes screeched, and the impact. Anna, it's okay, you're safe.
Liz was holding me tight. I couldn't breathe.
I was shaking, and I could hear my dad's last words in my head. He killed my mom. By admitting his mistake, he did something irreparable. And now I know it. That's why Mrs. Stone called him. They are traitors. Everyone's a traitor. When I calmed down, Liz drove me home. She waited for my father to get home from work, and then locked themselves in a room and talked for hours. I don't know how Liz did it, but after their conversation, my dad came out to me, fell to his knees, and started apologizing. We hugged and sobbed. We mourned for my mom. For the first time, mourned for our family. And we forgave. Dad forgave himself, and I forgave him. Now we're trying to move on with our lives. Every day is an effort. We talk a lot. Dad quit his job. We're thinking of moving to another city and start over there. It was really hard to tell you this story. But I've learned that you can't carry grief around, and you have to live it. You have to grieve it and move on. Life is one, and each of us is the master of our own life. Remember that.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I want to be popular at school. How else? Everything depends on your level of popularity. Will your classmates greet you, make friends? At what table in the dining room can you sit? And where will you ride on the school bus? The higher the rating, the cooler you are.
Stop! Watch where you're going. I could have hit you.
Suddenly, a cyclist braked right in front of my nose. Because of my thoughts, I was completely lost and began to cross the road without even looking around. Sorry, I didn't mean to, I mumbled. The guy was a little older than me, and judging by the clothes and the big backpack on his back, he worked in a delivery service. For a couple of seconds, the guy looked at me with interest, and then, looking at his watch, he jumped on the spot.
Crap! I'm late! Need help! Give me a call! And be careful! What is your name?
He was already shouting on the move, turning the corner. Rachel! I shouted, but the guy has already disappeared. He's a strange one. Hiding the business card that he just handed me hastily, I walked further to the school. What was I talking about? Popularity. As you already understood, if I talk about it so much, then my popularity level is below 0. And it is true. I tried different ways to fix it. At first, I decided to become a cheerleader. But at the first exam in the level of physical fitness, I failed miserably. Hanging out with a group of fashionistas was not all affordable for me. Every day I had to come to school in a new outfit, the cost of which was equal to my mother's weekly salary. I am silent about intellectuals. I survived only one meeting of their business club, and then I fell asleep in the middle. Of course, there is still the cream of society, the coolest guys in our school. But there is definitely no way for me to go there. There are only the richest, coolest, most desperate guys. And in order to get into this company, you have to pass more than one test. And not everyone can cope with it. And they were turned on by George. Quite a sassy guy who uses his charm to the fullest. I don't argue. He is an unreal handsome man. And every girl at school dreams of dating him. And even I. But I clearly understood that George would definitely not look in my direction. But somehow, a case turned up that changed a lot. For now, subscribe to the channel and please click on the bell. And I will tell everything in colors. My parents wanted to arrange a weekend for themselves. And now they announced to me that this weekend I will stay at home alone. Wow, this was my chance. I decided to organize a small party just for my closest friends, and I have very few of them. But in order to at least reach the status of a girl to hang out with, I took a chance and called some of the most active girls from the class. I didn't see much excitement in their eyes. Only the information that the house will be at our complete disposal all night cheered them up a little. Scrolling through my head about what I need to buy for the party and if I have enough savings for this, I almost ran into George.
Hi, I heard you're throwing the party of the year tomorrow. Am I on the guest list?
George grinned. Wow, how quickly rumors spread.
Whoa, have you swallowed your tongue?
Of course, come. George nodded smugly and already on the move. As if, by the way, he said, I'll take a couple of friends with me, okay? In principle, my answer was not important to him. Well, I wanted to jump from happiness. George at my party? Yes, the whole school will make noise about it. But the evening of the next day, everything was ready. I cleaned the house, bought various sweets and cola. According to my calculations, 10 people should have come. Well, maximum 12. After all, George wanted to take one of his friends. By 7, a company of girls pulled up. They stuck together, whispered, but I didn't care. They are at my party. I turned on the music, put popcorn, snacks on the table, when suddenly there was a knock on the door so loud that we all jumped together. George was standing in the doorway with big speakers blasting crazy music.
Hey, and here we are.
George unceremoniously pushed me away and stepped aside. And behind him stretched a whole string of noisy guys. Not 2, not 3, but a crowd. I asked to roll the music, as the windows in the house had already begun to rung, but no one heard me. The guys kept coming and coming. I was horrified to see what kind of drinks they bring with them. My parents would definitely not approve of this. Half an hour later, my recently neat and clean house looked like a dump. The guys, most of whom I didn't know at all, behaved terribly. They danced on the table, dumped in their boots on the couch, swam dressed in the pool, played golf in the living room. From this madhouse, I have already started to have a headache. I really felt bad when I saw that my mother's favorite Venetian crystal vase was smashed to smithereens. And the curtains! Those were very expensive curtains from Italy. Bought last month, are torn and some guy is riding on them. I was horrified. The doorbell rang, and then there was a persistent knock. It was Mrs. Bedford's neighbor. She was beside herself with anger. It's late at night, and here it is. They threatened to call the police if we didn't calm down. I promised her I'd fixed everything. Barely finding George in this crazy crowd, I asked him to help me stop everything.
No, dear. You wanted a party, so get it. Relax and have fun.
George brushed me off like a pesky fly. Yes, I was not ready for this. And what to do? I sat down in a corner and sobbed. Maybe I should call my parents. I started pulling out my cell phone and suddenly saw a business card. Oh yeah! The delivery guy handed it to me. How did he say? Need help? Call? That doesn't sound right. But a second later I dialed his phone number. Martin, so it was indicated on the business card. In about a miracle, he answered right away. Quickly explaining myself, I realized that Martin would rush in now. Really? What a delivery guy can do to a bunch of these crazy creatures. And 10 minutes later, I heard the siren of the police car. My stomach froze. A neighbor called the police. Now I'm gone. Many of my intruders also heard the sirens and saw the police car parked on the lawn, and some immediately fled through the back door. But the most daring continued to have fun. The front door slammed open. A policeman stood in the doorway, glaring menacingly around.
You got a complaint. Nobody come out.
There was no need to say anything else. My house was empty in a minute. The frightened crowd skipped across the yards. Only the heels gleamed. Somewhere ahead, I saw George. Yeah, where did his pomposity go? Thank you, officer. I started warily.
Hey, Rachel. I did not recognize.
Martin? The police officer turned out to be the same guy from the delivery. Are you a policeman? Martin laughed in response.
No, this is my older brother's uniform. And his car! I thought that you definitely don't need problems with the police, but you also need to disperse this menagerie.
You saved me, Martin. I am now in your debt. Glancing at the mess in the house, Martin winked at me.
Wait a second to think. We still need to put things in order here.
Martin and I cleaned all night. Of course, it was impossible to hide the torn curtains and the broken vase from the parents. I was expecting a harsh reprimand and house arrest, and I also had to get a part-time job in a pizzeria to pay for all the damage. But I didn't complain. Everything is fair, and you must answer for your mistakes. At school, George came up the next day and even tried to apologize. Like, "You're a cool girl, Rachel, blah blah blah." But with parties, it's always like that. Believe it or not, but I told him to go to hell, so that everyone who ran through the school corridor at that time could hear. George went nuts, and I raised my personal level of self-esteem. They began to greet me more actively at school. So this is how you can become popular. It's funny. But now I didn't care much. Seems I fell in love. The moment the guy on the bike nearly hit me, and then rushed to the rescue on my first call. And then he came to the pizzeria, where I worked part-time and made me laugh when I was insanely tired. A chance acquaintance with this boy had changed a lot in me over the past 2 months. I stopped looking at others, equaling someone. I realized that I can be interesting too, and cheerful and cool, and there is a person who does not care about all these ratings, but it is me who is important. I'll tell you a secret. Tomorrow, Martin and I have a real date. My house arrest is over, and I'm free. Now I will live as I want, communicate with whom I want. Does not matter what they think about it at school. This is true freedom. What I wish you too. Hi, I'm Meg, and I'm in a very difficult situation. This can be called a love triangle, but in reality, everything is much more complicated. Listen to me, please. Suddenly advise how to behave. We met Michael in a cafe. I took the only empty seat next to a handsome stranger. He smiled at me. That's how we got to know each other. It turned out that Michael, like me, was in his senior year. But he studies remotely, as he devotes all his time to singing and dancing, and also goes to acting classes. Michael was so focused. And I liked him right away. And it turned out that it was mutual because the next day, Michael asked me on a date in a cafe, and everything started spinning. I was in 7th heaven. After all, I have such a talented guy, but I didn't rejoice for long. Why? I'll tell you in a minute. But for now, please subscribe to the channel and click on the bell. Thank you. We met for about a month, but began to see each other less and less. Michael was on his nerves, soon casting in a new youth group where he madly wanted to get into. I understood everything and supported him very much. Casting has been successfully completed. Michael was chosen from hundreds of applicants, and the jury liked him so much that he was offered a personal project. The producer wanted to turn Michael into a real idol. I already imagined all the girls in the class would be jealous of me when they found out that I was dating a real star. The next day, Michael left for rehearsals. He was busy from early morning until late at night. At first, he excitedly wrote to me how everything was going, but after a week, the messages from him stopped. He also did not answer calls. But I understood everything. My boyfriend works hard to become famous. Once I came to school, I noticed that the girls were discussing something enthusiastically. Looking over one of them, I saw photos of my Michael. It turned out that he has a new account in social networks, which is being actively promoted. There are videos from rehearsals and Michael's streams and even spicy photos from training. And what is most surprising, now he is not Michael, but Gene. Classmates vied with each other discussing him, looking for merch with the image of Jin, and I wanted to scream. This is my boyfriend. Do not touch him. I'm over it. I don't want to share it with anyone. I called Michael, but he didn't answer. I called his producer, threw a tantrum, and he said that we can meet in the evening with Gene. I was hoping that we will talk with my boyfriend. I will tell about my feelings, and we will find a way out of this impasse. But Michael just handed me a list of rules that are written in his contract. He has no right to date anyone. Relationships can be started, but everything must be hidden from the public. I'm not allowed to like his photo on social networks and to correspond on his page. And if anyone finds out about us, Michael must deny everything. Like, we don't know her, and I came up with everything. This is the answer prepared for the press. And what kind of relationship will this be, Michael? You better call me Jean, Meg. Another person was looking at me. Sleek, handsome, with a pumped-up body, inexpensive clothes, but with empty, tired eyes. Not my Michael. Tears choked me, and in order not to burst into tears right there, I ran away. Needless to say, Michael did not even try to catch up with me. Weeks went by. I didn't leave the house. I always took everything very close to my heart, but this time I covered it to the fullest. There was no appetite. I started losing weight rapidly. Everything around suddenly lost its colors and became black and white. I could look at pictures of Michael for hours. During this time, his career began to gain momentum. The first single was released, which hit the top of the charts. The shooting of the video was being prepared, rehearsals were in full swing, and the worst thing is that Michael appeared at events hugging different girls. Models, bloggers, aspiring singers. I understood that these were just mutually beneficial agreements, but it still hurt me a lot. Seeing that I was getting worse and worse, my mother dragged me to a psychologist. I already had experience with her when my father died, and then therapy helped me a lot. The first few sessions were unbearable. I sobbed a lot, but it helped clear up the picture. I fell in love with this beautiful picture called Michael, became obsessed with him, and now I'm withdrawal. The psychologist explained that I needed to find myself, understand who I am, love yourself, become significant to yourself, and stop looking for an idol. Honestly, I didn't understand how this could be done. I'm an ordinary girl with no special talents. Sometimes I draw scribbles when I'm nervous. It helps. And the psychologist seized on it. I started going to art therapy. Then I went to art school, and it really took me. I drew all the time, studied art history, attended various master classes, brilliantly passed the exam papers at the end of the year, and my teacher took some of my works to the exhibition. I came to the opening. The art gallery was in the center of the city. The exhibition is big, and there were a lot of people from the very beginning. I stood, looked at my canvases, and did not believe that it was me who painted it.
Very interesting solution, right?
There was an attractive guy next to me. He looked at my paintings appraisingly. Emotions raged inside, so I could only nod in response.
Do you know who the author is? I would like to purchase them.
I'm the author, I whispered. The guy immediately smiled warmly and extended his hand to me.
My name is Derek. I am fond of art, especially this direction. Are the paintings for sale?
He had such big shiny eyes that I began to drown in them. Derek was 24 years old. He just graduated from university. I have always been fond of art, interior design, and now I am looking for myself. Parents are doing a comprehensive renovation in the house and asked him to fill the space of the house with interesting paintings. And now my paintings will fit perfectly into the interior. Derek told me this in a cozy cafe, where he invited me to sit after the exhibition. And he asked me to draw a few more paintings in the same style. He bought all of my works, and for good money. I couldn't believe it. But after that, orders poured in on me. There were even regular customers. I was able to help my mother, and I constantly wanted to pinch myself. Is this really happening to me for real? Derek started courting me. Dinners, walks on the water, excursions to museums. With each new meeting, we realized that we had a lot in common. I shared everything with him, but kept quiet about the story with Michael. I stopped following him a long time ago. There was neither time nor desire for this. After a couple of months, Derek suggested that I organize my own exhibition. He took care of all the technical issues. He found a hall, paid for several articles about me in the media, invited the right people, and the show went great. The entire urban beau monde gathered. Several paintings were bought at once. Many wanted to collaborate with me. I don't even know how to thank you, Derek. I hugged him tightly after the show. For the first time, they took such care of me and my interests. To celebrate this event, Derek invited me to his house.
Look how your first canvases fit into the interior. Parents are just delighted. And they really want to get to know you.
When I saw Derek's house and his parents, I was shocked. He was huge, just a palace. I had no idea that Derek's family was so rich. His parents greeted me very warmly. We chatted in the living room, discussing my work. There was a feeling that we had known each other for a very long time. Music was playing, we were all laughing loudly at something, when suddenly Derek's mother abruptly stumbled and looked at the door. I followed her gaze and almost froze. Michael stood on the threshold of the room. He was pale. There were dark shadows under his eyes. His hands were hidden in his pockets. And his eyes! He seemed to be looking through us. Derek's mom ran up to him and pulled him out of the room by the hand. Dad followed her. Derek and I were alone in the room. I was silent, and I couldn't figure out what it was. Suddenly, Derek said in a low voice, "I'm sorry. He wasn't supposed to be here. It can be seen that the nurse has gone somewhere, but he is harmless." "Who is he?" And Derek explained that it was his younger brother, Michael, that he dreamed all his life of becoming popular, of becoming an idol, so that thousands of girls all over the world would go crazy for him. But in the end, I almost went crazy myself. He could not stand the competition, strict rules, the resume, and also with the girl he loved. The producers forced him to disperse. Now he is on sedatives, undergoing therapy, and I hope the moment will come when our cheerful and smiling Michael will return to himself. This story gave me goosebumps. So Michael didn't cope, and apparently today he didn't recognize me. Because of the sedatives? I didn't know how to react to this. Should I tell Derek that the girl Michael was forced to break up with was me? Derek interrupted my thoughts by suggesting a walk in the evening garden. A month has passed since then. I fall more and more in love with Derek, attentive, caring, able to appreciate me. Yesterday he offered to live together, and also gave a ring. Yes, Derek and I are now engaged. I am well received in his family. My mother gets along well with Derek. And only I sometimes wake up in the night in a cold sweat. The secret about my relationship with Michael haunts me. I saw him a few more times, but Michael does not react to me in any way. Should I tell Derek about everything? After all, everything's secret always becomes clear. What if it ruins our relationship? I don't know what to do. What would you do? Write in the comments. I'll be waiting.